Yes, hello and greetings. This is Andrew Jamison from the B&D Group Training Academy. Today we're going to launch into a further session on the PE beam compliance. This is a next level up from the information session that we commenced some weeks back. We're now going to step through a pack that's been developed specifically around the installers and service personnel of the industry, in particular the Australian and New Zealand dealer markets. So we're going to step through this now. So to recap, we've condensed a number of these items here. We're launching in 1st of December into a new wave of standards across Australia and New Zealand. That standard in particular is 60335.2.95 hyphen 2012. There was an amendment put through on this in 2018, and that's where we play into for the new standard appendix, which is about the operation of smartphone control or a network device when used in a garage door situation, residential garage door. We need to install a photo bin. So that was put into place in 2018, but it was given this 2-year time frame for the manufacturers to get their house in order, and that's why we launch come 1st of December 2020. But there has been some other appendices identified and enforced throughout the marketplace that relate to the 60335, and those are put on the screen there, identified as 2012 to current. So these were: installation of residential PE beams must be at a height no greater than 100 mil from the ground or the deck, and there's a diagram to follow up on that. Now, if using auto close, there's a timer to close on garage door openers, and especially in B&D group openers. So that's a fully adjustable auto close timing system that's built into the opener. And if that's going to be initiated, so the door is going to come down by itself after a pre-given time, this photo beam must be installed in this situation. It's actually stopped from auto closing by default and will not function without a photo beam actually installed. So that also came into play in 2012. And then the one thing that people are still a bit unsure about, and it also came into effect in 2012, was the closing force, or the leading edge of the door when it is closing must not exceed 400 Newton or 40 kilos of dead weight. So in that case, if that door is out of that boundary of that 40 kilos or 400 Newton, a safety beam must be installed in those situations too. So that's pertaining to those designer doors and potentially flush mount doors once the weight really gets up in terms of the dead weight. And then, as I said, called out before, the main one that we're going to talk about now is the changes affecting the use of a smartphone control. So the hazard of unattended operation of an opener when you're activating and monitoring and controlling with a smartphone or equivalent device anywhere in the world. So if that's the case, from the 1st of December 2020, we need to, in smart openers, to install a set of photo beams, whether that's wireless or wired, and with a smartphone control kit, that's also requested that that has that safety beam element installed at the same time as well. So there's two variants in the marketplace: an offer that we go to market with in Australia and also New Zealand. The first one on the screen there, you'll see that we're just going to recap purely on the products affected within the Australian market. So there's two brands, B&D as the consumer brand and the trade brand being ATA. So if we talk about the current state, if we're going to install a STO7 CAD Smart or a smartphone control kit after the 1st of the 12th, we must install the photo beams, and that would be on CAD Smart, as I said, and also Secure, Panel Max, and the rolling door CAD PD. With ATA brand product, same applies. If it was a smart connected unit, being the Wi-Fi unit out of the box, that's the ATS3 Synchro, and that needs a set of photo beams as well, come 1st to the 12th. And then any smartphone control kit installed on GTO 11 Aero, GTO 6 V4, Easy Roller, and then the GTO 12, because it is that commercial opener with smartphone connectivity, but only when it's installed in a residential application, because this is a residential guideline. And then backward compatibility, if attending a job after the fact and looking for an opportunity to upgrade to smartphone control, then in B&D brand, photo beams need to be installed if that was the case on Prodigy, Advance, CAD-S, and Panel Pro. And then with the ATA brand products, it's Dynamo and Enduro with a smartphone control kit after the fact. Flip the page and we go across the ditch to New Zealand. Also, our colleagues in New Zealand bring to light the Dominator brand, being the consumer brand, and the Garador brand being the trade brand. So I'll step through it once again. Connected units in both brands. So DSO3 Dominator, the smart unit out of the box that needs a set of photo beams installed after the 1st to the 12th, as does a smartphone control kit installed on DSO2 Dominator Secure, Select, and RDO1 V1 XL rolling door opener. And then if, once again, the GTO 12 is installed in a residential application, that also needs that photo beam installed. Invert the brand now to Garador, and we also have a connected unit, being the Garador Genius, Wi-Fi ready out of the box, that needs a set of photo beams, as does anything installed with a smartphone control kit after the 1st to the 12th, with relation to GTS2, the Garador Precision, 1, GTS 1 Focus, RDO1 V4 Reflex, and once again, the Hero in a residential application. Backward compatibility suggests that we've got an obligation there for existing openers installed, and therefore STO2 V2 Dominator applies. The advanced model, if using a smartphone control kit, or Panel Pro, and then the Garador brand, if attending and upgrading to smartphone control, you need to do that on Precision and also Focus. So to go forward, we also need to realize the audience that may be listening and watching this recording have never had to, because the need has never arisen, to install a set of photo beams. So to go backwards, we can go forwards. So I've just put purely a definition there of what a photo beam is, and it's a sensor. Okay, we call it a photoelectric sensor, and therefore PE is that shortened term. So PE equals photoelectric. It's a sensor or photo eye, and it's equipment used to discover the distance, absence, or presence of an object by using a light transmitter, often infrared, which we apply, and a photoelectric receiver. So we at B&D manufacture what's called through beams. So that's a combination of a transmitter and a matching receiver on the opposite side. Whether that's wired or wireless, both are through beams, meaning there's a light beam, being infrared, running through from transmit to receive. So that's the photo beam. So what function does it perform? When a PE beam is broken, so it's installed and commissioned and fully operational, when a photo beam is broken, meaning the beam is being broken by a physical object, it is momentarily interrupted on the closing cycle. The door will stop and reverse direction back to the fully open position. Okay, so clearing that obstacle potentially. It's providing that non-contact, so you don't need the door to come down onto an obstacle now, because the installation has beams, and it becomes non-contact for that auto reverse mechanism to work. Also, when auto close is selected, we talked about auto close before, and if that function is enabled, the timer to close, if the beam is broken in that condition, any attempt to close the door will stop and it cannot close down. The timer is suspended and the door will just stay there until such time that the photo beam is intact, and it will ignore until that time all control devices. So whether that's remote control devices, wired commands, anything that's going to tell it to close is ignored until that beam is intact. So on the auto close function, it gives us the ability to enable it, because without photo beams, that auto close function is dead. It's not live and can never be enabled. No matter what you do, it will only start working when it senses the circuitry, when it senses that a photo beam is actually functioning and commissioned. Now, this is just an excerpt from our installation guide for photo beams, and it starts to get you into the world of compliance. And we're talking about that 60335 Australia and New Zealand compliance. And therefore, we call out a couple of things here. We're calling out that yes, the beam is going to be broken and the door is going to be traveling back open again in that line drawing on the right. We're also starting to talk about the installation height, which we talked about before, at 100 mil off the deck as the guideline for the correct installation height of a photo beam. You'll also notice that it's actually to the beam itself, to the infrared beam itself. So the way that we generate that is from the deck to the bottom of the beam, 65 mil, and then it naturally falls the infrared eye sensor across the opening to 100 mil. So measure from 65 mil to the base of the unit, and we will achieve 100 mil. We also start talking about that other area, which is part of that 60335, which is that 40 kilo leading edge maximum force on those bigger doors. But if we talk about the fundamentals of installation, this is one of those fundamentals. We need a laser level. We need a perfect view at the level transmit and receive. Without them being level, the beam will function poorly, and invariably the true symptom across any fault with a photo beam installed will be the door is suspended open and will not come down. So therefore, misalignment, because the beams don't line up with a laser level, is what we're trying to avoid, because that avoidance will stop any unnecessary callbacks because of this set of photo beams not being straight. Okay, they can be knocked out of alignment, but the obligation by the service and installation personnel is to, from the installation point, to get that level spot on. Okay, so once again, I called out in that slide that it's trying to avoid that unnecessary callback because of incorrect installation of the beams is the most critical thing that we are trying to call out on this page. We'll also bring to light something that's been aware within the industry for some time, but if you're not aware of photo beam technology, it is a combination between transmitter and receiver in the through beams. That term again that we use, a through beam is a communication between a transmitter and a receiver. Now I'm calling out that we've got a transmitting side and a receiving side, and that is deemed by the installer as to which one he's going to start off on. But we're actually calling out a very important knowledge here, that shade affects the transmitting side, and sunlight does. So we need to be aware that The receiver will always sit in the shaded side, and there will be a need periodically to invert or change the position left and right of the opening to affect that change. If you do not, and we put the receiver on the sun side, we'll get blockage periodically because of the light intensity of the sun, and therefore get those intermittent callbacks, which once again, you'll realize through the pack, we're talking about the same thing over and over again. We're trying to minimize callbacks once the photo beams are fully commissioned. Okay, so just be mindful that sometimes, and it's an easy swap out, just to change the, just loosen off the hardware and change that position, especially when we're talking about our technology in the B&D group, which is that wireless technology. Very easy swap out. Just a hardware page, just to call out the fact that we manufacture bracketry to suit wired and wireless that is common. So the bracketry on wireless is exactly the same as the bracketry on wired. Fully adjustable forward back, fully adjustable to a point top down, meaning north south, so we can achieve that straight, perfectly straight level alignment between transmitter and receiver, and to free up any potential obstruction by being able to fully adjust forward and back off the elongated slots on the bracketry. Okay, so, but the beauty here is that they're common hardware and can be interchanged between wireless and wired if you find yourself on site with one or the other. We also bring to light a wall mounting kit that's supplied as standard within the wireless installation pack. So this can be very neat if the job is trying to avoid the bracketry and potentially any ongoing knocked or being knocked out of alignment because of user issues relating to knocking those beams. Well, with the wireless, we've developed that wall mount kit so you can keep them away from harm by directly wall mounting them to the wall on the opposing side of the transmitter and receiver. Now, we don't have any imagery here, but we can on the and will on the secondary session. So this is step one. We'll go a bit deeper into diagnostic in the secondary session, but this one is just calling out a housekeeping area, which we discussed briefly on the information session. So if we talk about two beams in the B&D portfolio, one being wireless, one being wired, if we were going to be asked to put in wired beams by the customer's direction, quite well and good, their take on that. If that's the case, we're actually asking for professional installation. And professional installation is a lengthier time to install, but that's the advent of putting together flexible conduit or straight conduit, elbow joins and clips. So we have a termination starting at the transmitter and receiver around the opening, leading back to a nice even protective cover, which is the conduit itself, of all those cables, leading back to the power head of the unit, the given power head, and that it's a nice, neat installation. What that will do is prevent any untoward damage of the wires long term, or any breakdown of the wires because it's housed within conduit. And once again, we're trying to aim for best practice, which is a professional, clean installation rather than just unconduited, which would mean that you've got wires floating around behind guides, up along channels, potentially pegged along ceiling lines, which is not aesthetically pleasing for a professional job, nor what the customer's expecting. So we'll talk about that in terms of installation time on a couple more slides ahead, but it's just a call out for good housekeeping would say we're asking for installation of conduit at the same time as wired photo beams. So stepping through it, it just concertinas straight into the labour. So if we looked at our competitive advantage in this space against our known opposition, we are the only company in the world that is presenting wireless, totally wireless photo beam technology or safety beam technology to the marketplace of garage doors. So that means that we've got some benefits, very strong benefits in installation time to get this compliance area over the line. So this opens up a conversation with yourselves as installers and subcontractors for true labour costs. That's why I put the question mark there. If we say, okay, wireless is on top, we know that with a bit of wriggle room, probably a bit more, estimations would say 10 to 15, but we're saying 20 to 30 minutes for a set of wireless beams to be installed, right? But if we looked at those two ways that you could install a wired set of beams, 40 to 60 without conduit, so lengthier installation time. But the big one is 80 to 90 if we're talking about a professional installation with proper conduiting all the way from transmitter and receiver all the way back to the power head and terminating at the power head of the garage door opener. So if that was the case, it opens up a conversation. Now, I won't be having that conversation today, but it's on the screen for you to actively chase down your key stakeholders involved in all this. So this could be your sales teams, your management, whoever's relating to how long it actually takes and factoring around labor component and pricing for every individual job. So how long does it take for a start in a real world? And then what does that mean for the consumer labor side? Okay, because we don't want to undercook our labor on any of this because it's a compliance area. We want to get in and get out in a very efficient way. And it also brings to light just that natural conversation of the benefits, and they're black and white on the screen, of using the B&D Group wireless beam solutions because of the sheer time savings that are documented there. So half the installation time when comparing it to a wired set of beams. There's a number of photo beam kits on the B&D portfolio, just depending on the era of manufacture. So I'm going to step through these just quickly. This pack, by the way, is available for distribution as a PowerPoint, so as a reference document, but also the recording as we're doing today, we'll talk through it a bit. So if we talk about the next gen openers, so that's the B&D, ATA, Dominator, and Garador branding, that's those next generation sectional motors. Well, we brought to light the easy fit transceivers, so therefore we've got a new kit, right? Very quick to install because you're snapping in that easy fit transceiver and then installing those beams left and right of the opening. So very fast, efficient installation now. But new installation standard would say that we've got to have the manuals correct. But if we look at rolling door openers across the 4 brands, and also the heritage brands that came before the next gen, which was, if I grab a brand, it could be as simple as Advance, CAD S, and Panel Pro in B&D, or a rolling door opener being the CAD PD Power Drive, or in Dominator, any of those equivalents in those previous ranges, or Garador. Same applies. We're talking about a wireless photo beam that had a base station, so a third item, which looked like the transmitter and receiver, but that needed to be wired into the opener. So you'll see that wiring configuration there of those black, red, and yellow wires, which was the final termination to the terminal block. So they were the wireless beam configurations. One final one is GDO 12, and that also came to light with a new part number. You'll see on the screen there that why we relaunched a new part number specific to GDO 12 is because the base station, we took the opportunity to make it very efficient to install on this new commercial rolling door opener, and that went the way of getting the printed circuit board outside of the or housed within that that base station, and making it purely as part of the kit as a printed circuit board. And you'll see on the right hand side of this slide that we're talking about an ability for you to, as the installer or service technician, to purely just plug in with the supplied loom the printed circuit board, and it has its own designed area hidden from view. So it's purely just that transmitter and receiver across the opening. Okay, but because of that, we have to bring to light a new order code. So that's the wireless beams. And the same goes for the wired beams. Okay, so the wired beam technology changed when we brought to light the next gen sectional motors and also the GDO12, where the supply to run the receiver has now gone to the technology called BUS, BUS, which is data and voltage. So that means that it's a 5-volt DC supply to run the wired easy beams. So therefore, a brand new beam. Please be aware that there could be some confusion here. They look the same. Always look to your packaging. The part numbering is very clear, but if you looked at these two beams, being the bus beams or the right-hand side, which is the existing beam, easy beam kit, they look the same physically. So it's the outer box that will define the difference between the two. So with the next gen openers, 5-volt DC supply now, and also GDO12. But then if we looked at the easy beam, which is all rolling door openers and the sectional openers that we talked about in terms of the previous gen, and if I picked another brand again and said ATA, that would be an equivalent of a GDO6 V4 rolling door opener, easy roller, and or a GDO11 Aero, or a Dynamo GDO9 V3, or even the Enduro GDO9 V2 Enduro. So these all had these easy beams, and these beams were a 12-volt DC supply. So they're not interchangeable because they will not work. Okay, so it's a call out here. Don't get that confused, but we'll step it through a little bit easier now with a guideline for you in terms of how we're going to kit these things out with this compliance change. Okay, so the compliance change would say we need to box them together. We've chosen an idea of a sales bomb, which a sales bomb in essence is basically a picking order code. Not physically, the PE beams are not physically in the goods. They're actually being accompanied with the delivery. So these picking order codes have been communicated in a lot of lands. If they're not communicated out to the briefing or the New Zealand communication through Matt and Paul and their team over there, it means that it will come shortly. You'll see it on the screen here. So we have an Australian view here. It might look slightly different in terms of an order code for New Zealand, Dominator and Garador. But in terms of a B&D and an ATA branding, it's as simple as this. We have put them together to make it easier for the trade to just, if there was a solution required, and I stepped through the common one, which is the B&D, I said the CAD Smart, the STO7, it will come out as natural with a wireless beam. We think that that is the best way to present the option for a B&D accredited dealer in the market. And so wired is not kitted out, but wireless is, and that's 87678 for the CAD Smart. And if we step through the rest of the slide now, you'll notice that the smartphone kits have also in B&D brand a wireless beam, and then the previous gen openers that would need a smartphone control kit upgrade, it obviously needs the photo beams as well, and there's that order code relating to them because they are slightly different in physical design. And then if we step through the ATA brand, we're now giving the trade the ability to choose, right? So wireless or wired, those sales codes have been set up. And if we step all the way through, we have also the ability to kit out the GDO12, because that was that solution with the hub and our first commercial rolling door opener with a smartphone control capability. So therefore, we're kitting that one out as well with a wireless beam solution. PE beam compatibility, this is why this pack is good for communication later on and transmitting to yourselves as a reference tool. So we step through just purely compatibility. Okay, it's a really good diagram. This is actually an excerpt from our price list. Okay, we're giving you some guidance as to which openers are relating to wired capability to the models. So incorporating the new brands. My apologies here, it does not incorporate the New Zealand branding in smarts and their equivalent. We can transmit a slightly different pack to yourselves over in Kiwi, but all I can say is that if you read between the lines here, ATS2 is the equivalent of the smart device in New Zealand. And then we'll just identify once again with the dots as to which beam is compatible all the way through from wireless by the models and then the 2-wire easy beam. So it's a quick snapshot of compatibility. And now we're starting to get into some nitty-gritty relating to the performance of beam technology, especially when we're talking about the next-gen openers. Okay, so this is a next-gen tip guide, and there's only 2 tips, but they're very important for long-term performance and to get out of jail free when it terms we're having some issues on site with relating to connectivity with these wireless easy fit transceivers. So the first one I'll call out is the combination when using the auto lock. So our wireless auto lock to a next gen opener with the easy fit transceiver in combination with a wireless beam. So what we're asking for is a staggered slide switch location. So you'll notice in the top right-hand images that I'm identifying there the slide switch location. And that just means that because they've got an identification as soon as they're plugged into the board with the loom, they need to be told which device they are. Okay, so it's not a crosstalk area, it's actually board recognition. And we're saying that the bottom line is that you need to stagger those switches. So auto lock, as an example, would be on left-hand side in this case, and the wireless beam would be opposing on the right-hand side. Just so long as they're not the same, we'll not have any confusion at board level about what is connected and potentially some delays in commissioning and walking away from a fully installed set of products. Okay, so that is the slide switch location. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is in the manual, and it's called out, but it's deep in the manual, so we bring it to light as a tip here, and that is when disconnecting and reconnecting these easy fit accessories, or you've actually unbolted them and then you're putting them back in for whatever reason, there is a resync mode. Okay, so we're saying it's a disconnection and reconnect process, but it's going to refine these unique devices. So what we do is we go up to the mode button on the back of the unit, and we'll press that repetitively until the gear light is on. Then press stop set button until the main courtesy light stops flashing. Take your finger off. At this point, the unit has disconnected electronically from any physical connection to those easy fit transceivers and then refound and resynced them together. So if there was any installers and service technicians that have experienced this before, this is your get out of jail for free. This is that quick solution to not knowing why it's not working, why you're getting one product not working and the other working, and vice versa. So there's a number of things here. What I will tell you here also is that wireless beam technology is unique to us. Okay, so it is something we offer as a competitive edge in the marketplace. What we're also bringing to light, if you don't already know this, is that you can actually install in the B&D Group product multiple photo beams off the same garage door opener. It's unique to us as well. Okay, a known opposition, you can only install one set of beams, where we've allowed for, especially in next gen, upwards of 2 photo beams. Okay, so what we're telling you is that we can utilize what can be asked for sometimes is 2 beam locations because of one particular situation. This situation is that the high bed vehicle is housed in the garage. And if you can imagine this, that the high bed vehicle is being backed out, so the 4-wheel drive, and the front of the vehicle or the rear of the vehicle is actually going to break the beam or go over the beam, first, so potentially an unsafe area, before the tires hit them to break the door to stop it in auto reverse or keep it open. All of these things would say that you need a set of photo beams higher. So you must have one at 100 mil. We've outlined that. But with our technology, we've provided 2 inputs. So you can actually put the next one up higher to protect against that high bed vehicle access. So that would be potentially between 300 and 400 off the deck to prevent that area from having any issues. So it's just something to be aware about yet again. We're talking about unique functions and features, and I'll just keep rolling through them now. So this is really important because we've just called out for the fact that we have potentially some areas of installation areas that could cause inconsistent performance and therefore multiple callbacks. The facts are that if a photo beam is faulty in any way or misaligned or not functioning the way it should be, maybe cut wire in summer wired events, you're going to have the situation of the door is suspended open and not closed. Now that presents a problem because that could be a lag time between getting someone out to the consumer site to close the door down and fix the problem. So we have built in many years ago, and many people don't know of this or were not aware, that we have a fail-safe, and once again, a get out of jail for free, and it's called a safety beam failure emergency close mode. So the safety beam has failed, and now we have the ability to close that door down electronically to get lock-up security until such time as someone can come out and address that beam issue. Whether it's a faulty beam, whether it's an alignment, we don't know. It's just holding the door suspended open. So the procedure is very simple. With a coded remote, so a remote control that is coded to that door involved and the door suspended open, you simply press and hold that channel that activates that door, press and hold that button for 5 seconds continuously, and it turns the product in what we call dead man mode. And you can continue to drive the door down now. It will drive the door down by continuously holding your finger down on that button. If you take your finger off, it'll stop the door immediately. That's what we call fail-safe or dead man. It's an inching button. So it will take the door down to the fully closed position. But why we put this dead man or inching function in, because the safety beam, the compliant device, is not working, we don't want you to take the door down all in one action. We must have you hold your finger down for the whole duration of its cycle. This is a safety method, okay? So that is unique. It's called the safety beam failure, emergency close mode, and is available on any garage door opener for the last 8 years of manufacture. Okay, it's built into the function. So it's a peace of mind area for you as the service technicians and installers of the world. Troubleshooting, I'll put on the screen. There's a lot in troubleshooting, and that's why we're going to focus on it on the second session, potentially recorded only, because as we get closer to this pointy end of the year, it means that maybe another session won't be possible live, but we'll put it in the tank and send it through to you as an MP4 recording as well. And it's going to focus on these areas. So when we're building up capability of photo beam technology, we need installers to understand, we need frontline staff to understand if there is going to be an issue, how do we define what is going on with the opener? And we've got generational motors installed. So we've got Series 2, which is the existing sectional and rolling door openers in the field, but we've also got these next-gen openers. So they all bring to light different symptoms and different lamp flashes from the courtesy light and different LED states or flashes off the back of the control panel to tell service personnel and also consumer in what is going on, whether the door's been broken by a photo beam, so that momentarily, and it's auto reversed, it's going to give a state. It's also giving you a state if the photo beams are permanently blocked and it's will not come down. It's going to start flashing rapidly from the courtesy light. So all of these things are indicated in troubleshooting, and we'll step through them in detail on the next session. GDO 12 has its own raft of conditions as well, which are linked to the troubleshooting. Because it's a unique new product to us, the diagnostic is slightly different. One thing I will talk about, and go backwards slightly to go forwards, because it was remiss of me to just bring it up, I brought to light specifications down below. Specifications is a good guideline for yourselves and sales personnel and any sort of person that's customer facing or scoping the job, because it's giving you the spread capability or the distance of the photo beam itself, right? So we're going to be focusing on the easy beam and the wireless, but it's giving you the most important things, how far it'll work across the opening, because there's so many different types of openings available. We need these guidelines outlined. So we also bring to light the type of batteries, if it's a wireless beam, our technology involved, but also the most important thing for the consumer is based on residential use. So it's only being used a couple of times a day. We can actually call out the battery life, meaning how long before the batteries in the photo beams need to be replaced. And that's identified there on the screen. We'll go into some detail around that on the second session. But as I said, GDO 12, it's there. It has those same specifications listed. Obviously, or it's not obvious, but the distances are slightly different when we start getting into the GDO 12. Communication's been monthly from our marketing teams across Australia and New Zealand to identify that we have some important changes in the marketplace that we need to be aware that are compulsory. Okay, these are compulsory for the garage door industry. They're compulsory for the manufacturer and the trade at large who is installing and selling a product that is unattended operation, meaning it's a smart device where the door is being controlled without you being at home. Okay, so we need to follow these guidelines to the letter, and that's to give you the best opportunity to not get out to site as service personnel and not have the right goods to install the goods, install the openers, and that's why we're bundling. But it's a really good call out here and the way we've communicated, because we're also providing an excerpt from our frequently asked questions. We call them fast facts in the first comms, and fast facts gives us the ability to just take some questions that were fielded by our internal people, our customer base, ourselves as the project team relating to this area of the compliance change, to say, these are the types of things that we think we're going to need to answer, even down to the consumer type questions. So an expanded view of that is available on request and has been communicated month on month as well, which is the frequently asked question based list, which is on the screen now. So I'll talk to a couple because they're very important. We are aware of them, even as service technicians and installing partners, to understand that what happens if, okay? And these are outlined in a full list, able to be communicated. So if I work from top to bottom, does the change affect me if I have a smart opener installed before the 1st of December 2020? Do I need to install a safety beam? Well, the answer is no. Okay, so it comes into effect 1st of December. But however, we would highly recommend that you have a quick conversation with the customer about safety beam installation, because it's a duty of care. We would like them to have specially that that smartphone device or any other garage door installation to have a safety beam, just for that duty of care and that non-contact safety. Do I need to install a safety beam if I'm replacing an old opener with a smart opener after the 1st of December 2020? Yes is the answer. So you're replacing with smart, so therefore, yes, you definitely need to. Do I need to install a safety beam if I purchase the opener before 1st of December, but installed it afterwards? Well, that's a really important point there. Yes is the answer. In B&D, we do a lot of manufacturing, so the sale date is quite different and a long period of time potentially between the ordering and the delivery. So therefore, we just need to make sure we're all aware. It's actually the Australian standard addresses the installation date, not the purchasing date. So the installation date is the most important thing. Okay, so there's a number of them listed, too many to go through. I think we're up to about 15 questions that we answered, but reach out if you need a copy of that. It is available through the B&D Group Trade Hub, or the reaching out to anyone within the B&D organisation to get a copy of that to you. And we come to the base end. Okay, so this is just a call out very quickly to say, this is session 1 of 2. Okay, we haven't got there yet because there's a lot to unpack in diagnostics. Okay, and some housekeeping that would say that we just need to make sure that everybody's aware of what does it look like for an aligned photo beam? What do the LEDs look like when they're not aligned? So we just get a baseline of how to interact with photo beam installations from a technical point of view, both the installer and service technician, but also call out the things that we've maybe gone through today as well. So correct installation. So we're saying that there is a correct way to install a set of photo beams. We're talking about those good housekeeping and use of conduiting. We'll go into a little bit more in session 2 on that. We definitely have spent some time on labour adjustments, because labour adjustments is where it's at. If you can be transparent now as service personnel and installers, especially subcontract installers, where it's your bill going to the business, it's going to be a seamless transition between installation, because there's enough meat in it for you to install the product. Okay, so transparency to managers within the group is very important, but also from a dealer perspective across both Australia and New Zealand, it's good to know how long it takes for these things to actually occur. So I would actively request that you get into a conversation with all of the key stakeholders to drill down on how long does it take to set up a set of wireless beams, and how long does it take to set up a set of wired beams. So everyone from sales level, from frontline staff to management and to the installing teams know exactly what's expected, and we're not undercooking the labour charges and therefore losing money on a compliance installation. And then fault finding, that's going to be really unpacked. We need to really drill down on that because we believe the duty of care from the B&D group is to upskill all of the people relating to beams, because it's potentially going to happen over the years where we'll see beams become potentially mandatory across all garage door and automation. So it's good to start changing this now to get into a habit of, this is the drill. If photo beams are installed, this is what's going to happen. And that's why that fault finding needs to be completely unpacked. So especially the people that are on the line today and are going to watch the recording, it's about the ability to understand what happens when things go wrong. So what state the openers are going to be in when the beams are faulty. And so we got a quick method of rectification, okay? And potentially to minimize those callbacks. The callbacks are the things that will obviously do a lot of damage to our business as we step through, because they're going to be those things that are going to damage the margin on each sale. And especially when we're talking about a compliance area, we want to get this right off the bat. So just a summary, these changes with the use of a smart device across Australia and New Zealand, across that Australian Standard 60335, Appendix number 2018, and then the amendment put through on 2018, means that today we're communicating about what's happening from 1st of December. And that is that any smart device, whether that's smartphone control kit installed or smart device, meaning a connected garage door opener across Dominator, B&D, Garrador and ATA, needs a photo beam installed. So whether that's a safety beam wired or whether it's a safety beam wireless, we give you the options through the options that we've outlined. I trust all this information is relatively clear. As I said, this will be transmitted across Australia and New Zealand now. And if you have any further questions, please reach out to your business development manager across both New Zealand and Australia. And or send a note to myself at the B&D Group Training Academy email, and we can point you in the right direction. The follow-up recording will be potentially parked into a recorded state in the first week of December, so we can have that out as the advanced session on diagnostics. So with that, I say thank you for your time and good afternoon. And we'll see you next time when we present as the B&D Group Training Academy.